Hi, everybody. Welcome to our company's Millennial Think Tank. We have 3 people here now and some other people coming along that will pop in. So tonight we are talking about mentorship in today's workplace, especially as the workforce changes so much. There's so many remote workers. There are so many part-time workers. There are so many contract workers that it's not as straightforward. Mentoring isn't as straightforward from a business perspective, because companies often question why they should invest in younger workers who may need mentoring when those younger workers probably won't be at their place of employment for more than the average American worker stays at their workplace for 4.5 years, and for millennials it's even less. For younger people it's less. That 4.5 years is the average when you include people who've been at jobs for 20-some years and so on. And the other thing is, I was reading a really interesting article today about how mentoring has changed. It was a boomer who wrote it, who said that when he was young and you looked for a mentor, you looked for somebody up the ladder and then you listened to them, and that's sort of how it went. And it was a very formal, respectful relationship, younger person respecting older, younger person listening to older, and that's the way it worked. And it's not like that at all now. And it's not just millennials. You know, Xers and millennials behave in such similar ways when it comes to this, but on average, millennials have more than one mentor. They might have a business mentor, a life mentor, and mentorship can go both ways. The younger person teaching the older person things as well. And I'm sure all of you have had some experience where people in your workplace just assumed you understood tech because you're not 30, right? Let's start and have you guys introduce yourself. I'll start with you, Judy. Who you are, where you fall on the millennial spectrum, what you do, and where you are geographically. And now she's frozen because I called on her first.
My name is Judy McCluskey.
You went out,
Was my
Jude.
microphone working at me?
It was. Put it close to your mouth because it was working.
Great. Hear me.
There you go.
Okay. My name is Judy McCluskey, and I am an older millennial. I work for Chicago Shakespeare here in Chicago, and I think that's about it.
Yes, that's it. Samantha?
Hi, my name is Samantha. I currently reside in Kitchener-Waterloo, Ontario, Canada. I am a younger millennial, and I currently do property and membership appreciation for a shared office space, and then I write in my spare time, which is pretty awesome.
What was it? Property?
It's like I'm the community manager of a shared office space, but I'm doing I do the property end, but I also do the membership stuff, so it's really cool because I get to do a lot of small business stuff. I'm doing a lot of workshops, so it's cool. And that I'm working on for the fall is called Beers and B2B, which is pretty cool.
Oh, that is cool. Okay, yeah. And Jillian?
Well, I am Jillian. I am a first wave millennial, and I work at a real estate company in New York City. I'm a digital marketer, community manager, and blogger.
Okay. All right, so I will ask you, Jude, I'll start with you. Do you have a mentor right now at work?
It's actually really interesting that you bring this up today. I have a really interesting kind of situation at work where I have an immediate supervisor and she has an immediate supervisor, but there's not really people necessarily managing me all the time. And I'm working in the other direction with a lot of junior staff, and I was talking to the very head of my department today, and she was talking about how she has one person that works directly under her, and she's gotten used to having these millennials come in for 2 years and go out and go to good positions, and she's told me that that's kind of a standard of her success right now with them. That's where she kind of views, did she go well? They hit, marks that she wants for them, and then where they go on afterward, not the fact that she keeps them for 20 years. So she's kind of what I've got for right now. She's been in the same business I know she's been there for at least 20 years at this theater, and she's a little old school but really open to new stuff, and she is just so great with people. I feel like every day I'm just learning stuff that I had never ever thought of before. But it's not that we're close, super friendly buddies. It's a very striated business sort of relationship. It's, she's my Jack Donaghy, so. Yeah.
So when you said when they go on, does that mean even if they go on to a successful position in another theater company or somewhere else, she still sees that as a success for her?
Yes, actually, she told me today 2 of our biggest competitors here are Steppenwolf and Goodman, and she told me that 2 of the last people in the position that she directly manages, they went on to Steppenwolf and Goodman, and she was proud of them that they were able to go on to good theater companies like that, and she considered that a huge success.
Now, what does her supervisor consider it?
Her supervisor is actually the head of the company, the executive director. I have not had that conversation with, but he never seems to have an issue with what the turnover is. He's more interested in what our output is.
Okay. How refreshing.
Yeah. Or maybe he's having conversations I'm just not privy to where he's wondering why everybody leaves after 3 years. But no, from what I have heard in my interactions with him, he's much more interested in the quality of what we're doing and getting it done on crazy theater timelines than necessarily onto somebody for 50 years. But at the same time, he's been with this company since its very inception, and a lot of our higher level people, they've been there for 15 years, and he's only 26 years old. So there's a vision kind of in the upper management and the people doing the day-to-day work of who's been there for so long, and it's interesting to see kind of how they operate with the 2 different groups. The people that have been there forever, they understand there's an emotional buy-in and a personal stake in success, versus how they sometimes talk to people that are down on my level where, they're trying to remind us, it's okay to have a life. We understand that this is not your everything. And, the good speeches we've gotten are definitely, the artistic director emphasizes go home, take your vacation days, go enjoy yourself and come back refreshed, which is a really nice message to hear once in a while.
Yes. All right, wait, I just have to ask. Jillian, do you ever hear that at work? Go home, take care of yourself, don't work too hard.
Yeah, when I got hit by a car.
What? You got hit by a car?
Yeah, it's not like, a general thing that like people say, but it is kind of encouraged to go ahead and use like your vacation days because they send it, and I'm not sure that they pile up. I think it might be kind of a use it or lose it, but I can't be sure about that because I don't necessarily I don't think that I've ever had vacation days for that long. I use them all up to visit family over Christmas. So I don't really know if they have like a super pro vacation culture at work, but they definitely have a very self-care culture. Like if you're going to be at work, then you need to be, like able to contribute at work. So yeah, when I had my car accident, my boss was definitely like, just take care of it. Like don't push yourself to just be here so that people can see your face.
Is your boss your mentor, or do you have one at work?
It's kind of a weird thing because it's not formal, and I don't know if generations past have like made it like a formal relationship. Like I am your mentor person now, and I'm giving you advice for mentorship purposes, or like I think maybe now it's just kind of like, if you and your boss hang out after work, you can maybe consider yourself friends with your boss, but I don't know what the criteria of mentorship is.
Well, that's interesting because, yes, in times past, and some companies still try to do it, where there are formal mentorship programs where they actually match you without your input to someone, which doesn't necessarily work. It's definitely changed. Many companies recognize that doesn't work. Studies show that doesn't work. But then there are companies, TJ, who comes on, he works for a credit union. They actually have a formal mentorship program for the first year, and you're stuck with that person for 1 year. Now, you don't have to go back the second year. I think that the way I see it is that it's something that you may or may not ask someone to be your mentor, but whether there's someone that you're turning to for career advice in your office, or maybe not in your office. Maybe they're just in your industry or business sector, I have formally asked people to mentor me, but I've never actually worked at a company that had a structured one. I mean, have you don't have one there? I mean, Samantha, does your company? They don't have any.
We're weird. I will say that because there's like 4 different centers, right? So we have 4 community managers, one for each center. Then we have like a director who is in charge of all 4 of us, and then we have like the CEO. So like there's 6 of us, and we all kind of know each other. But our mentorship is like each center is focused on one thing that will help other community managers. So like we have one community manager who is like does all of our like tech stuff. That she's like a whiz. So if we have any tech problems, we always like talk to her. We have another one who's been with the company the longest and knows property stuff the most. We have another one who knows like finance, like no tomorrow, and then I'm the person who knows events and building up membership stuff the most. So each of us kind of mentors each other as we go along, which is a really interesting thing because it's really lateral. And then our formal boss is actually the person who teaches us all the software and is also like straight up like, I will take the bullet for everything. Like if you ever feel like something's going to happen, say my name, I will be there and I'll take the bullet because I don't want you to take it. And then it's really interesting because we're also building up this new way that we want to do this, like how we want the company to look. So our CEO is like talking to us all the time too. So it's interesting.
So you consider these segmented mentors, right? Like they would mentor you on a specific end of the business. Are they any of them your peers?
Yeah, because like the 3 other community managers besides myself.
I meant age-wise. I didn't simply mean hierarchy-wise.
One of them is, the oldest is 35, but all of us are between 25 and 35. So I would still say that we're like in that millennial sphere range kind of deal. And then our immediate boss is 35, and our CEO is like 35. I would like, we've all gone out for drinks. Like we hang out when we're not doing stuff if we're on the same city.
So I read a lot, it was people writing about millennials. You know how I love that. Like people telling you how it is when they're not millennials, that there was a lot of peer-to-peer mentorship.
Yes. And you basically, like, when you get to know each other, you like put your stuff on your sleeve. Like I literally was like, hi, I come up from the nonprofit world. I'm going to be focusing mostly on membership benefits because that's what I'm good at. I don't know properties, so someone's going to have to help me with this. And everyone's like, oh yeah, I'll help you. And like that was like another thing. There's one center, she's like, I'm not a great people person, so I need someone to tell me how to do membership stuff or whatever. So it's like we've all identified our own things and go to those people to help us.
Okay. And so Jillian, tell me about it at your work. Do you have someone that you see as a mentor?
Well, yeah, there are some people that I would like actually go to, and well, so when I came in, I had like sort of like Judy has a direct manager, and then that manager had a direct manager. And while my direct manager was there, I did not really have very much contact at all with her direct manager, and then she took her leave from the office to move on to do, pursue her career, and and then I got my, sort of, promotion or whatever, absorbing a part of her job into my daily job, and I started to report to her direct boss. So then she became my direct boss, and she actually has, taken over a little bit of that role that my immediate boss used to in that way. But we don't necessarily talk a lot about, career stuff, and just like we don't really get a whole lot of personal, talk in. And I think maybe it's just because that's a little awkward, you know what I mean? Like
depending on the relationship too.
Yeah.
So
like,
how big is your office? Like how big is the company and how big is the office?
Mine?
Yeah.
I would say like in our main offices, we have satellite offices in DC and in another office in New York. But in my main office, I would say there's like around 100 people.
Okay. Well, because this is what's
different departments.
So Judy just said in the chat, and this has been my experience too. She said, "Have you seen a difference in mentoring arrangements in larger versus small companies?" Right. And this is interesting. She said, I worked in a 2-person company with a great boss who was a fabulous mentor. In a large company, there seems to be less time for that sort of thing. And you know what? That's my experience as well, and it doesn't make any intellectual sense. So when I worked at the carpet mill I worked at we we probably had 450 employees, but in management, we had very few. It was super lean. It was the president and an executive VP and 3 VPs, and that was it. No other management. I got constant mentoring from the president and the executive VP all the time. They were there for me. And we all had a ton to do because we had such a lean management. You know, we had hundreds of employees beneath us. But then I've worked in bigger companies where you would think people would have more time because there are more people doing things and had that experience. So, Judy, tell me your story about that. And I'm going to be very unprofessional and run and let my dog in while you talk, okay?
When I first moved to Chicago, I got hired by this fabulous woman named Amy, a different Amy, obviously, who she had a dog company at the time, a dog service company, and she was looking to expand. And I was like, oh, I like dogs. That's totally a thing I could do right now. And, you know, so I started with her. And I just thought it was going to be like, oh, just this little like part-time job where I was going to walk dogs and it was going to be that. And as soon as I started working with her, she's like, no, I want you to understand everything I want to do. It's not just that I want to play with dogs, but you know, we want to do things that are environmentally friendly and things that are really good for dog nutrition, and we want to educate people. And she was so passionate about it. I got really excited, and every day, even if it was just through an email, because I didn't necessarily see her all the time when we first started this, she'd be like, oh, by the way, something else that I learned today, blah, 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 this is a great training technique that we can use. You know, this is a way that you could be handling customers for this that will make it easier for you and make them trust you more. This is another way that, you know, and it was just continually like this influx of not advice on how I'm doing my job wrong, but just like, oh, you know, what else would be really cool? This is an idea in the industry that we should try to lean toward. And by the end of it, we had expanded, there were more employees. I was making all natural, organic dog toys for the online store that had been started. We did trade shows, we did nutrition counseling, we did all sorts of cool stuff. There was pet photography, like this blew up, and I felt like she had really trained me in the pet industry and in how to start a business, which really helped me because I went on and helped another friend, and we started a fight choreography business because that has anything to do with pets. But the foundation was there, and that was because of her. I had, you know, gotten the skills and the confidence to move forward with that. She had weekly dinners with me just to kind of talk over, hey, you know, what are you having issues with? What do you want to learn about? Where do you think we could go? And I really enjoyed that back and forth where it felt like it was a safe environment to learn things and ask questions, because I haven't always had jobs that it is a safe environment to not know what you're doing or to ask for knowledge, and that is a rarer thing than I think people realize.
Well, you know what? I think that's a great point about small businesses, because I was talking to someone that you all know, Millennial, who's deciding whether to stay at a large company with lots of opportunity or go to a startup. And I said, listen, in that startup, you're going to learn a lot more because you have to. For those reasons you were just talking about, Judy, that that there aren't a million people to do it, so you have to do everything so you learn more. Okay, Samantha, do you want to weigh in? Because I do want to switch to Judy's question about, have you mentored people and are you mentoring people? Or do you want to...
Why don't we go to that question? Because that's really interesting. And I even said that was like really interesting.
No, be interesting about it.
Oh, me? Yeah. Oh, goodness.
Do you mentor anyone?
You know what, I have in the past, especially in the nonprofit world. And even now, I'm still doing a lot of mentoring in the nonprofit world, less so in the corporate. And I think it's really interesting because I've always had, I had the chance of being an executive director of a nonprofit, which was really awesome, and it also meant that I had to, you know, figure out how to mentor people because I had a bunch of people who, you know, were looking towards becoming, you know, in the nonprofit world as well. So basically, how I took it is I thought very hard when I was doing entry interviews. So when I came in, most of my staff was already hired. So I said, I'm going to do entry interviews even though you're all hired because I want to know you. So we all had an hour-long conversation, and I basically said, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Like, what brought you to this nonprofit, and what are 3 things that you want to learn with your time here? And so most people were like pretty straightforward with what they wanted to learn or what their interests were. And I'm like, okay, I know that this is currently your role. I will make sure that if I have side tasks that follow and some of these things are not part of your role, I will give them to you or at least discuss them with you so you see the process. And then also let's try and figure out how to incorporate those other things into your role. And so I had one person who was our events coordinator, but noticed that I was writing bylaws and policy all the time. And so I was like, if you want to sit on my bylaws and policy meetings, feel free to. And like literally, as I take on more stuff, you can help me edit or look how to do these things. And then, you can take on some of these roles, and I can take on a few of yours because we can work on this sort of like in a cyclical manner. And then I can even give you advice on which nonprofits to apply to in the future when you do decide to transition out. And so like it was a very open, honest conversation, but it was always furthered on what do you want out of your time here, and how can I make you the happiest during your time here or most fulfilling in your time here.
Okay, that's letting people actualize what they want. Such a new concept.
And if other people did that to me, I would never quit companies. I would stay there so long if they're like, literally, what do you want out of this? I'd be like, this is what I want.
So, okay, that's a great point. So, Jillian, tell me about who you mentor.
So I have only had the opportunity to mentor a couple of people, and kind of felt great to do. On the first person, like we only had contact for a couple of months, and then she transitioned out of the company. But we did have a couple of conversations, and we just went straight to like serious talking. We skipped a lot of that small talk stuff, like, oh, don't you like slingback shoes? Actually, I don't. I like toes out shoes, that stuff. But
I love you.
we just we got straight to talking about things, and like I gave her general advice of just like getting navigating office politics and things like that, and just like putting your best foot forward like at work in general. I think a lot of that kind of information is kind of left out of people's education a little bit. Like people get that like freshman intake, class when they're in college, like, oh, what to wear for a job interview? Probably you should wear pearls, women. People like those, like, not really updated information, and that's like what people have to go on. And then once you enter the offices, I think that like now you have people expecting a lot out of an incoming hire, whereas before maybe you had like a more of an expectance of longevity out of the employee that's coming in, so you would, kind of let them find their own footing for a little bit longer. With that being said, like now I spent a lot of time like with that first, mentee, just kind of giving advice on getting along, at work and doing those things that maybe people just don't know right off the bat. And then with my new intern that came in after she transitioned out, she, I guess, already had that footing, and she was just an amazing intern to begin with, so she didn't need a whole lot of, like, correction. So really with her, I just, I was able to talk with her and be like, what do you want? What do you want to do? Kind of like what Samantha did, but, but the items that we had for her to do were less overarching for like the entire company, so we couldn't really provide a whole lot for her. But lucky for me, she didn't want to do much more than just like what the marketing department could provide, so I was able to help give her the kinds of projects that she wanted to learn from, and then we got to have her to join our department full time. So I think that I'm going to count myself as a success. in that regard.
Well, you know what you said that really struck me is when you said you got straight into the meat of the conversation with the first person you mentored. See, that's the beautiful thing about a formal mentorship. Because if you have to wait for it to develop naturally on its own, you have to go through all the silly small talk conversations. So this past summer when I decided to start my own business, and not play around anymore. And I asked someone formally to be my mentor because I needed an honest business advisor that was going to kick me in the rear end. And it gave me that. It was instant. I mean, we already knew each other, but it gave me instant, like, this is what it is. This is what I expect of you. This is what you expect of me. I know you're going to be hard on me, but I want to get somewhere. Without a formal structured mentorship, you have to do so much of that other stuff to get to the point where you feel like you can ask advice. Whereas if a company structures it for you, you know it's a safe place to go ask advice. Like, Judy, they can't say to you, you know, this isn't a safe place. They're supposed to be your mentor. So, I don't know, Jillian, are you asking me if that person has an opening? They might. Okay, Judy, do you want to talk about the people you mentor? And there's a question I want to go to before we switch to arts and non-corporate stuff. I want to ask you guys if you mentor up at all. So I won't say that it's called a formal mentoring, but because of this tech social world that we're in, and I'm on the fringes of tech, even though I'm not really a techie, definitely have boomers asking me for advice. Asking me for advice on managing millennials, asking me for advice on technology in the workplace and things like that. And when I was reading a report today about millennials having older mentors, but it being a two-way mentorship, I thought that's really interesting. That's what I want. I feel like I have that with Joe Cardillo in a lot of ways, you know. I don't know that I would call him my mentor, but it's definitely a peer thing, you know. So anyway, Jude, you talk about all of that from your perspective and the people you're mentoring. And do you mentor up? Do you mentor your boss at all? That stuff.
It's actually really interesting.
Put your microphone near your face because every time you have it.
Can you hear me now? So my immediate supervisor is really, really good at what she does, but her I feel like her department has grown so fast that sometimes she's surprised by it. So another girl who's at my level and my age and I have been kind of working on ways to not just help ourselves manage our own department, but to also help her understand how, you know, it might be easier to manage us. So it's kind of, we don't call it mentoring up. They call it managing up sometimes, but I always feel like managing up has some sort of sneakiness to it. But so there's a little bit of that in the world of. I mean, I am working in a certain amount of tech for them, just out of default for doing digital content all the time. There is a certain level where, you know, after a while you're like, okay, so this is what we're doing. This is why we're doing it like this, and here's a way to think about it when we go through. We're launching a new website tomorrow, and, you know, I've had a lot of discussions with our festival director and recently with our executive director where it's that same sort of thing where I'm like, okay, great, we're getting really, really bogged down, but let's kind of take this back into more of a tech world sort of way of dealing with it and talk about what ideas you want, and then we'll get into the nitty-gritty because sometimes they get hung up on, you know, little bits of tech that they're like, oh, no, but this is really important. I'm like, no, that's a color. It doesn't matter. I can change that. Don't worry about it. So there is a bit of that. And then, you know, on the other end, there's junior staff and there are interns that I'm working with. And this one girl in particular, whose name is Jenny, and she is fabulous. And if she ever leaves, I'm going to cry and cry and cry. Jenny has taught me a lot since I've been there. She was just like a general marketing assistant when I first started, but she knows so much about the history of the company that she's a great resource. She's like, oh, well, they did it before previously like this, but maybe you want to approach it like this if you're going to pitch.
Wait, how long has she been there?
She was an intern there, and then she just had an anniversary. I'm terrible. 2 years or 3 years?
How does she know so much about the history of the company?
Because she works in archives, and she has to do a whole bunch of stuff on previous shows that they've dealt with and previous projects. So that's how she kind of gets a sense of how projects have been structured beforehand.
Okay, that's interesting. I was thinking, about the need to have people who have been around or understand the history of a culture and a company. But I didn't realize she was there for such a brief period of time. Okay, let's jump into the. I have no idea where Armand is, but let's jump into the arts. So I'll just read from the chat what Judy said. Can we talk about the difference in more traditional mentors and mentoring in the arts world, not theater orgs, but for actual artists, actors, musicians? And so part of what I found is interesting in some of the research I did, although Samantha would scoff at my use of the term research, because really I just read a whole bunch, is that millennials and I do this as well. I have a different mentor for my life. The person who mentors me for business, and if he's watching, he will crack up. There's no way in hell I'd let him mentor me for my life at all. But millennials often, or younger people, have different mentors for different segments of their life. But you're talking about people who are in the arts as a career, right? And I have to tell you this quote that someone said to me. One of my clients said this to me when we were looking for someone to do frontline editing and things like that for us, and it's more than just frontline editing. He said, "I don't care who you bring me, Amy. They have to have an English degree." And I almost cried with joy. I'm like, I don't know if I've heard that in 25 years. They have to have an English degree, yes, for the liberal arts. But anyway, so talk about what you would need in the non-corporate world, right? And then talk about how do you find them?
I'm assuming that's me.
You or Samantha or whoever. I mean, Jillian isn't simply a work person, right? You're all well-rounded individuals who have your own interests. But so tell me how do you have an art or an arts mentor? Do you have someone that coaches you in that end?
Actually, because I actually went to school for acting, I was dumped into this wonderful, wonderful community that was full of not just people my age and recently graduated actors, but everyone who worked in my conservatory. All of the teachers were currently working artists, which was a great resource. And within the theater community, it's very informal a lot of the time. It's very personable, and there were a lot of cross lines between professor and friend and coworker and mentor, and and so a lot of those people have kind of stuck with me, even if I'm not geographically in the same area. My school advisor actually there was an actor, and he gave out great advice that you might not want to hear, but it's important, really harsh stuff in a very friendly voice, such as, you know what, lose 20 pounds or gain 20 pounds because you're not employable right now, which sounds terrible in any other industry, but it's something you need to know as an actor going in. And I felt really lucky to have someone who's going to tell me hard stuff like that and not tell it to me because they're mad at me. And now that I live in Chicago, again, I'm working in an arts organization, but it seems like every show I work on, every theater that I work for, you start picking people. You're there for a little while, and you're like, oh, you I can learn from, and you kind of gather your own community of mentors. So there are people that I've known for years and years and years, and there are new people that I have just met, and I'm like, no, I wanna know more about writing from you. This is a place that I need to go with this person.
Okay, Jillian. Nothing arts-wise besides your dog mentor.
Wait, I missed the. I was pushing. No. I heard what she said. I just was trying to unmute myself, but I clicked in the wrong area. So yeah, well, I have a life mentor, but not like an art mentor. She just helps me navigate being an adult. Yeah,
and it's not your mother. It's a real. No. It's like a separate mentor.
Yeah, I take her mentorship into consideration.
Oops, I was muted myself. So Samantha, tell me, since you are a multifaceted person as well and are an artist, how do you find those other types of mentors?
I'm really lucky that there's a lot of resources for people of color who are artists in my area, and so I was chosen this summer to be in this fantastic collective, and there was like 7 of us all together, and we had 4 facilitators. And literally, if I ever have a question about my art, which completely changed from this like time frame of being here, I can always go to one of them, which was fantastic. So I've got 4 people that I can call. I've got another 2 people that I participated in this like weekend long awesomeness that I can talk to at any point. And a lot of my connections within the art community also come from being a part of like marginalized groups, which is really fantastic, because I find that marginalized artists are really, 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 really focused on like boosting up the community. So there's a lot of like older people who are like, these are what worked for me. Like if you're applying for a grant, this is what worked for me as a person of color, or this is worked for me, whatever. And also the spoken word community in Canada is very strong. We have a very, very large group of people. And when I was in Edmonton, one of the people that I worked with almost exclusively was like led one of the poetry slams all the time and was like super amazing, and literally took me under his wing and was like, this is how I'm going to get you to meet the right people, and I'm going to make sure that you know how to do this and that you are going to the right events. And like in the span of 4 months, I was very like, I was a part of the community. And I can't imagine that anywhere else, where it was like 4 months I was considered an okay voice to listen to about arts in Edmonton.
And you know what? That thing you just said right there about making sure you meet the right person, it can be just that. So I went to Milton Hershey School, you guys know that. Every year we go back and the alumni take the graduating seniors to a banquet. And sometimes you really bond with that person. This year I coincidentally got a woman who was going into marketing. That was just a fluke. It wasn't intentional. But what I always try to do is, like one year I get this young man who wants to be a police officer. I'm like, and he looks at me, and I know he's thinking, are you kidding me? He was this, young black man who wanted to go back to Philly and be a cop. And I'm like, I know I am the worst match for you possible, but guess what? I'll take you over here and I'll introduce my friend Greg, who's a captain at a precinct, and my friend Brenda, who's been in the state police for 25 years, and hooked him up. And he was just like, that was gold for him. And that's all I did. And then they took him and he went on ride-alongs and all that. Like, to me, that's a huge part. And I want to shift gears a teeny bit because the men are all slackers, and because they didn't seem to need mentoring tonight, the men who didn't show up. I want to talk a little bit about gender mentoring, because I'm starting a new project on the U-Turn website called Breaking Glass that is real advice from older established women for younger women trying to navigate the work culture. And the thing that inspired me, and I couldn't stop thinking about this, I think it was Pew Research last month that did a study that said that millennial women, women are graduating equally to men from college with college degrees, or if not surpassing them, right? Yeah, more, even including in the medical field, which is really interesting. Okay, they start their career with huge optimism and really high goals. They want to be managers, they want to be, or whatever the career path is. 4 years is all it takes for their optimism to be crushed. That's it. 4 years, and they start saying things. And I had this young woman I spoke to today, and I was telling her about this concept. She's probably about 28 now. And she said to me, when I told her about this Breaking Glass, she said, Amy, where were you 4 years ago? You don't even know. She said, I was so broken by my first experience in the work culture, dealing with a lot of these, issues, that I changed my goals and I decided I wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. And that is not what I wanted to be, but it was almost like an out, because she felt like she couldn't get there in her career. And the fact that women make 76 cents on the dollar totally pisses me off every single day, because that's what we made when I was 24 years old, and nothing has changed. So, and you guys probably know I'm a huge fan of Lean In, and I know Cheryl got a lot of crap about it, but my take on this is that women have to learn, they have to understand that it is what it is. So when you said, real advice, Jude, like they're going to tell me I need to lose weight, or they're going to tell me my hair doesn't look, whatever it is, because that's acting, you need to hear it. I feel like young women need to hear the things that maybe they're not going to be told, but are going to happen to them within their career. And a lot of times what happens, and this is talked about in all sorts of circles, that established women aren't there for younger women, or aren't matched up, or they don't find each other. And this happens in the legal profession a tremendous amount. I had an attorney friend who used to try to get older attorney established women to help younger women. So have you guys experienced things where it would be very helpful to have a career advice from somebody of your same gender? Okay, Samantha. It's always so hard to tell that you want to say something, Samantha.
I know, I make it so difficult. I don't ever emote it. Okay, so anytime I've had the pleasure of working in student unions, but anything that is unionized, it's really hard to find females or find people who will take you up the ladder, especially if you get into government work. And I swear to God, I was at this conference and I was looking around this table and it was basically all guys. And I've talked about this group that I was a part of before, but we literally had 6 of us out of 90 people. There were six of us who were females, and we called ourselves the Dream Team because we were the only females a part of this organization. And literally, we would go to events, and 2 of us were staffers, and we would just sit there being like, we're in the back of the room. There are 4 people at this table of 90 who are female. What do we do here? And we're supposed to represent, all the students in Canada. This really sucks. So it's I'm constantly seen in these positions of power. And then when I got into nonprofits, there is a huge line. So you have a bunch of low-end workers or frontline workers who are females. And as soon as you get into executive roles or into managerial roles, they're all men. And so when you're the only female or the only person of color and female there, you stick out like no tomorrow. And that literally was my life when I was working in the nonprofit world, was I'm the female in this room. I was a part of a few committees, and literally I could be the only person in a position of power who was not a white dude.
Yeah, so to me, that's why, and Jillian wrote in the chat, they don't find each other, and they don't necessarily want to make it easier for the next generation, which is something that's talked about all the time. I think, yeah, and men are not going to get out of the way because the economy is hostile to people. Yeah, exactly. Men are not going to get out of the way. And I just think it's really important to have a woman. And it's interesting because all my business mentors have been men. Now, I was in a male-dominated industry. I was the only woman VP I knew of. There was nobody above me to ask. There was nobody even at a competitor's business to ask. And I was lucky. But since I've been in the social world, I've definitely found more women who are successful and established that can help out. So Judy said you've been told that some women can't take the risk of displaying mom behavior, right? Wow. Why is it mom behavior if a woman's mentoring? Tell me.
This is just from a handful of conversations I had. I don't have any hard numbers on this stuff like Samantha obviously would. But I was talking basically along the same line before about why women aren't always helping other women, go up the ladder. And someone who I really respect for where she's gotten herself to, but I wouldn't call her cuddly. I would barely even call her friendly sometimes, but she's very efficient and she's very good at what she does. She told me that she had to work so damn hard to get people to respect her that she's not going to give them the excuse to think that she's some sort of mom or some sort, I think she said mommy bird actually, which sounded really weird. And that, the idea that her job is going to change to just be about taking care of those who are weaker than her. She didn't want to portray that because what she was doing in business at that point was kind of more cutthroat and about eliminating competitor threats.
So that is interesting. In the chat, Samantha says you're called a mama hen and people think you become a protective raging bitch. I think this is where, okay, this is where I stand on that. One of the things I tell young women all the time, get used to the labels and ignore them. find a way to say, I am the bitch in many parts of my life. I'm called that because I'm outspoken about politics. I'm called that because I speak my mind. I was called that by people that worked under me that weren't women, and I don't care anymore. I know that's not okay, and Joe Cardillo will say all the time, I understand what you're saying, Amy, but men need to change the way they view women in that circumstance. And I say, fine, but I don't have 20 years to make them change. I've been trying to wait for that to happen. Screw it. I'm going to navigate this world the way I have to. And I know it's easier for me because Judy and I come from a long line of outspoken women. My grandmother raised me, and my grandmother was a very dominant force, so it wasn't as difficult for me. And I know it's much harder for some women, but that's why I think it's so important to have female mentors too, that can be really direct and tell you that you're going to go through this. But you have to, and you don't have to give up being successful and change. And not that having a baby is a horrible goal, of course not, I have one. But when this young woman told me today that she changed her goals and made having the baby the primary goal in her life, and she knew one reason she did it was to escape the hell that was the work culture, that just killed me, you know? So when I get this thing together, which will be very soon in the next week or so, I'll definitely, you know, tap you guys. But Tina Fey style. So okay, sorry, I get off on that tangent because I'm so passionate about it, and because it's about mentoring, and I hope that when you guys are, you know, in your late 40s, that something is different. I hope you're not sitting here on some whatever technology will make possible by then, talking about 76 cents on the dollar and women not helping other women get up, you know, or not being there, or not being able to find them. So anyway, did I miss anything that anybody wanted to weigh in with mentoring tonight, or anything to do with that subject?
Well, I mean, there's mentoring outside of work, which is, I think, a lot of people don't know that you can actually do that. Like you mentioned, Amy, that you have mentors in your life for different parts of your life. I think that's, you know, something that people don't know is an option to them. I don't think that people know that they, number one, can have a mentor, or number two, that one doesn't just kind of appear with a letter from Hogwarts to, you know, whisk you off to personal life success. I think that, and I listened to this one podcast, and I have to shout them out because they really are helpful, and they give like real advice for, you know, real people to take, especially in our position. They give millennial advice to millennials, people who are navigating their careers and, you know, moving forward in life and work. And, you know, they had one episode, it's called Two Guys, One Show, and they had one episode that talks about mentorship, like finding a mentor, being a mentor, working with a mentor, the fact that it's a two-way street, like two people need to be committed to the relationship, and both people need to know that it's actually happening, and the whole nine yards. But I think that it's kind of left up, you know, in the middle, kind of like dating now. That's kind of like, who's gonna say it first? But I feel like, you know, it's a relationship that needs to be, like you said, kind of not overtly. What's the word?
Well, you definitely want it to be formal to that degree, right? You want
explicit.
It to be spoken. Yes,
Judy,
explicit.
yes. Explicitly.
She's making up for her horrific spelling earlier in the chat. Yeah, because it changes things, doesn't it, when it's explicit? Which is why I think it's so hard for many millennials, because many of them are either in these odd jobs where they work 20 hours a week here and contract here and this and that there, so there's no way to make it formal unless they do it themselves, where in olden days maybe the company made it formal for you, you know? So yeah, explicit. Okay, I'm sorry, my terrible awkward closing, but that is about every question I had. Really interested in the mentoring up thing, or the managing up thing. I would love to do a show, Samantha, with older people and ask them if they recognize when they were mentored up. That would be fascinating to even know if maybe we should just do a general survey, because I recognize it definitely, but I'm also immersed with millennials. Like, look how I know Samantha's face is. I'm around millennials all the time because of this millennial think tank and because I end up mentoring them. And so I can see when I'm learning things, and I can see where there are areas that, are certainly making me, I can tell you this, all this work I've done with the Millennial Think Tank for the last year made it much, much easier for me to be employable when I decided to start my own business, because I could say, hey, I know how to talk to them. Anyway, all right, with that, we're going to close next month. I think it's the side hustle. That's coming up, whether the side hustle is ethical, which should be really interesting, because I'm going to try to get someone to come on who thinks that the side hustle is unethical, and then if you're employed for someone, that's all you should do. So we'll talk about that next month, and thanks you guys for coming, and see you next month.